Welcome to the Sidereal Signal. I'm Zuri Adaze, and this is the podcast where the sky stops being a sentence and becomes a system.
And I'm Dr. Amani Okoye. Tonight is not a horoscope. Tonight is a 14-year delineation, a working model of the collective mind from 2026 to 2040, built on exact ephemeris, not vibes.
On February 20th, 2026, at 16:54 Universal Time, Saturn and Neptune conjoined at 0 degrees and 45 minutes of Aries. On the Aries point, the first degree of the entire zodiac, that is not a transit. That is a doorway.
And if you think that's the headline, wait until you meet Uranus in Gemini, Pluto in Aquarius, the longest total solar eclipse of the century in 2027, and a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Libra on November 1, 2040, 48 hours before the final solar eclipse of this window.
Here is what we are going to do. We will disagree, sharply, structurally, lovingly, because that is how truth compounds. Amani will argue the chart is a field. I will argue the chart is a state space of possible histories. We will both be right, which is exactly the problem. Then we will build 3 original analytical tools, delineate every major transit to 2040 with degrees, dates, and mechanisms, and hand you a protocol you can run tonight.
And a warning, this episode is dense. We are not here to comfort you. We are here to give you instruments.
Let's start with the frame, because the frame decides everything you're about to hear. Classical astrology treats the chart as a text. A birth chart is a sentence with a fixed grammar, sun in this sign, moon in that house, and the reading is the act of parsing it. Postmodern astrology breaks that. The chart is not a text. It's a state space.
Define state space, please, because I want the precision.
A state space is the set of all possible states a system can occupy. Your birth chart is not one thing you are. It's the boundary of the set of things you can become. Every transit is a perturbation that moves you to a different point in that space. The reading isn't parsing a sentence, it's mapping a trajectory through a manifold. And here's the move, the same logic applies to a collective. A nation, a generation, a platform, a meme. They all have state spaces. So mundane astrology isn't the astrology of kings. It's the astrology of distributed cognition.
I'm going to push back, and this is where the debate actually starts. I don't think the collective is a set of individual state spaces that happen to line up. I think the collective is a field with its own degrees of freedom. When Saturn conjoins Neptune in Aries, it's not that 100 million individuals each experience a personal transit. It's that the field itself, the shared substrate of meaning, money, and fear, changes its curvature. Individuals then sample the field. That's why the same transit produces a market crash in one country and a tech boom in another. Same field, different sampling positions.
That's elegant, and I think it's half right. But a field without a state space can't explain specificity. If the field is the same for everyone, why does the 2026 Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries read as nationalistic impulse in one state and as an AI safety reckoning in another?
Because the field has local structure. Think of it as a topographical map. The transit is a pressure system. Where it lands depends on the terrain, the natal configurations of each polity, each institution, each platform's founding chart. That's not a contradiction, it's the difference between a global wave and a local tide table.
Good. Then here's our synthesis for tonight. The collective is a waveform defined on a state space. The transits are the Hamiltonian, the operator that evolves the waveform through time. Individual and institutional charts are the measurement apparatus. And the news cycle is the act of measurement. We'll come back to this, because it's the mechanism behind everything we predict tonight.
Lock it in. Collective consciousness is not a metaphor on this show. It is the object of study.
Amani, you're the theorist. Give the room the quantum toolbox in 90 seconds.
90 seconds, no more. 4 principles. 1. Superposition. A system in a chart, say, a nation's Pluto return, or a generational Saturn return, exists in a superposition of possible outcomes until it is observed. 2. The observer effect. The astrologer, the pundit, the pollster, anyone who collapses the waveform into a prediction changes the subsequent dynamics. Astrology has always known this. We call it self-fulfilling prophecy, quantum mechanics calls it measurement. 3. Entanglement. Synastry between nations, a treaty, a currency peg, an algorithm serving one population's content to another, creates non-local correlation. The US and China don't need an aspect to each other's charts, their charts entangle through exchange. And 4. Decoherence. The reason predictions fail isn't that astrology is wrong. It's that the collective waveform decoheres, leaks into the environment faster than any single chart can track it. That's why mundane prediction has a horizon. Beyond roughly a synodic cycle, you're forecasting the Hamiltonian, not the outcome.
And that's the genius rigor point. We can falsify the framework. If I claim the Saturn-Neptune conjunction collapses into outcome X by 2028, that's a testable claim with a date and a degree. If it doesn't happen, the model needs repair, not excuses.
Exactly. On this show, every prediction gets a date, a mechanism, and a falsification condition. That's the standard. Tonight, we meet it.
Theory number 1. I'm calling it the Aries Gate. Mechanism. On February 20, 2026, Saturn and Neptune conjoined at 0 degrees 45 minutes Aries, within 1 degree of the Aries point, the vernal equinox degree. This is the first Saturn-Neptune conjunction at the very threshold of the zodiac in recorded astrological history. The last Saturn-Neptune conjunction in the same fire trinity chain was 1989 in Capricorn. The fall of the Berlin Wall, the Tiananmen Square footage, the birth of the World Wide Web. Conjunctions in the same element form a series, 1952-53 in Libra, the Korean War armistice, the rise of television as a global nervous system, 1989 in Capricorn, the collapse of the Iron Curtain and the beginning of the network era, 2026 in Aries, the reset of the impulse itself.
And here's the original move, Zuri. The mechanism isn't the conjunction. The mechanism is the Aries Gate protocol. Here's how it works, in 4 steps, with a worked example.
And the worked example for the viewers. Take the United States Sibley chart, July 4, 1776, 5:10 p.m. LMT. Philadelphia. Ascendant 11 degrees 40 minutes Sagittarius. Midheaven 5 degrees 4 minutes Libra. On February 20, 2026, the gate at 0 degrees 45 minutes Aries falls in the U.S. 4th house. Square the natal ascendant from the 4th. The 4th is homeland, foundation, the Constitution as foundation. A Saturn-Neptune conjunction transiting the 4th, squaring the ascendant, is the signature of a legitimacy crisis at the foundation. The state's origin story dissolving while its laws harden. That's the mechanism behind the 2026 to 2028 constitutional turbulence the mainstream will keep calling anomalous. It isn't anomalous. It's the Aries Gate doing its work.
And the falsification date is 2033. If by the Saturn-Neptune square, September 16, 2033, there is no visible restructuring of the foundation legitimacy layer of the US, and I mean visible in the constitutional sense, not the vibes sense, then the Aries Gate protocol needs revision. That's how you do astrology with teeth.
Theory 2. The Gemini hyperlink. Uranus entered Gemini on April 24, 2026, at 0 degrees 3 minutes, a 00 ingress, less than a degree past the cusp. It stays in Gemini until August 2, 2032, with a retrograde return into Taurus until, actually, let me check my numbers. Uranus entered Gemini April 24, 2026. Stations retrograde September 9, 2026 at 5 degrees 42 minutes Gemini. Returns retrograde into Taurus briefly in late 2026? No. The deep matrix shows Uranus direct station February 2, 2026 at 27 degrees 28 minutes Taurus. Then final ingress Gemini April 24, 2026 at 0 degrees 3 minutes. and it remains in Gemini until entering Cancer August 2, 2032. One pass, no return. Clean.
A clean 7-year pass through the sign of the messenger, the network, the sibling, the signal. And here's the original mechanism: Uranus in Gemini is not technology. That's the lazy read. Uranus in Gemini is the restructuring of the information substrate itself, the medium in which collective cognition runs. Every Uranus in Gemini era has matched a discontinuity in the substrate: 1942 to 1949, the electronic computer and the atomic archive, ENIAC in 1945, the transistor in 1947, 1881 to 1888, the telephone and the electrification of the signal. 7 years each, same function.
So the claim is, 2026 to 2033 is the era when the substrate of collective thought, search, social, the whole attention economy, undergoes a structural phase transition. Not an app, the substrate.
The mechanism has 3 stages, and I want the viewers to write these down. Stage 1, 2026 to 2028, substrate fracture. Uranus squares its own ingress degree and opposes, let me be precise. Uranus at 5 degrees 42 minutes Gemini stations retrograde September 9, 2026. That station degree activates everything. The first Uranus-Neptune trine family is already closing. Neptune in Aries at 4 degrees 20 minutes, sextile Pluto in Aquarius at 4 degrees 20 minutes on July 25, 2026. With Uranus in Gemini, that's a minor grand trine in the air-fire continuum. That is the signature of a single coherent event, the collapse of the legacy attention economy into the machine-generated attention economy. Falsifiable. By the end of 2027, one of the world's top 5 platforms by user time has either been broken up, replaced, or fundamentally re-legislated. That's the fracture.
Stage 2?
Stage 2, 2028 to 2031, the Gemini hyperlink matures. Uranus reaches 14 to 23 degrees Gemini, and this is where I want the eclipse machinery, because the January 25, 2028 solar eclipse at 6 degrees 11 minutes Aquarius and the July 20, 2028 eclipse at 29 degrees 51 minutes Cancer bracket Uranus in Gemini at 14 degrees. Eclipses mark the hyperlink. 2028 to 2031 is the era of neuromorphic governance. The state begins to treat machine cognition as a constituent, not a tool, not a threat, but an entity with standing. The hyperlink is the moment the collective's nervous system becomes legally visible.
And Stage 3?
Stage 3, 2031 to 2033, the Gemini exit. Uranus stations at 27 degrees 16 minutes Gemini on October 1, 2031, then re-enters the last degree of Gemini in early 2032 before entering Cancer August 2, 2032 at 0 degrees. The exit is a warning. The substrate doesn't just change, it hands off. And the falsification for Stage 3, by August 2032, there must be a documented actor boundary event, a legal or structural recognition that machine cognition carries agency, visible in at least 2 jurisdictions. If not, the hyperlink protocol collapses.
I want to stress test this. Counter-argument. Uranus in Gemini 1881 to 1888 gave us the telephone, but it also gave us the panic over the telephone, the same panic cycle we're seeing now with AI. Isn't the hyperlink just the panic, dressed in physics?
No, and this is the crucial distinction. The panic is the classical read, technology appears, fear follows. The mechanism read is different. Every Uranus in Gemini era restructures the substrate, and the panic is what the old substrate does as it dies. 1881 gave us the telephone, it also gave us the first national moral panics about telegraph operators and switchboard girls. 1942 gave us ENIAC, it also gave us McCarthyism. The panic is not the transit. The panic is the decoherence signature of the previous substrate. That's falsifiable too. Track the panic to policy lag through 2027, and you will see it shorten every cycle.
Theory 3, and this is the one I'm most excited about because it's the one everyone will get wrong. The Taurus ledger. Saturn enters Taurus on April 11, 2028, at 0 degrees 6 minutes, and remains in Taurus until May 30, 2030, with the deep matrix showing Saturn stationing retrograde in Taurus at 11 degrees 19 minutes on August 21, 2028. Direct at 4 degrees 25 minutes Taurus on January 4, 2029. Retrograde again at 25 degrees 1 minute Taurus on September 4, 2029. And direct at 18 degrees 5 minutes Taurus on January 17, 2030. A 2-year pass, 2 full retrograde loops, in the sign of value, resource, the body, the ledger.
The lazy read, Saturn in Taurus equals recession. The mechanism read, Saturn in Taurus is the reconciliation of the intangible ledger with the physical ledger. The entire post-2008 financial architecture is a promise machine, derivatives, data, services, securitized belief. Saturn in Taurus audits that machine. And the trigger geometry is precise. Saturn enters Taurus April 11, 2028, stations retrograde at 11 degrees 19 minutes Taurus August 21, 2028, on the Hyades, the great V shape of the bull's face, and stations direct January 17, 2030. 2 years, 1 pass, 1 audit.
And here's the original mechanism. I'm calling it the ledger equation. Saturn in Taurus forces the reconciliation of 2 ledgers. The intangible ledger, financialized claims, tokens, synthetic capital, and the physical ledger, energy, food, water, land, bodies. The equation. When the intangible ledger's growth rate exceeds the physical ledger's growth rate by more than a factor of about 2, for more than 1 Saturn-Taurus pass, the reconciliation is violent. The 2028 to 2030 pass is the reconciliation window for the 2020 to 2027 speculative cycle.
Worked example with real geometry. Saturn stations retrograde at 11 degrees 19 minutes Taurus on August 21, 2028, the Hyades station. In the Sibley chart, that degree falls in the U.S. second house, the national treasury. Saturn stationing on the treasury axis of the Sibley chart is a hard currency event, and I mean that literally. The state's promise to pay gets repriced. The mechanism, intangible growth, exceeding twice physical growth for more than 1 Saturn in Taurus pass, forces a violent reconciliation. That's the ledger equation.
Falsifiable claims for the ledger, Amani. Give the viewers 3.
1. Between August 21, 2028, the first Taurus station, and January 17, 2030, the final Taurus direct station, at least 1 hard asset class reprices by more than 30% against the dollar. 2. At least 1 sovereign redefines its collateral, gold backing, energy reserves, data sovereignty, before 2031. 3. A famine, energy, or water narrative becomes a formal governance quarter somewhere in the G20 before 2030. That's the audit. Watch the Hyades.
And I'll add the political read. Saturn in Taurus in the 4th house of the U.S. Sibley chart, the 4th cusp at 13 degrees 27 minutes Cancer. Saturn will trine it from Taurus, and square the natal moon at 3 degrees 59 minutes Capricorn. Let me verify. Natal moon of the U.S. Sibley chart is 3 degrees 59 minutes Capricorn. Saturn in Taurus at 11 degrees 19 minutes trines the 4th cusp at 13 degrees 27 minutes Cancer within 2 degrees, and squares the moon from 7 degrees away. The square is wide, but the ingress at 0 degrees 6 minutes Taurus on April 11, 2028, opposes the natal moon at 3 degrees 59 minutes Capricorn? No, Taurus opposes Scorpio, squares Aquarius and Leo. The U.S. natal moon at 3 degrees 59 minutes Capricorn squares the Taurus ingress at 0 degrees 6 minutes within 4 degrees. That's the food and body axis of the collective. Watch the U.S. agricultural and healthcare policy complex in the 2028 to 2030 window. That's the ledger, political layer. Welcome to the Delineation Lab. This is where the debate stops and the instruments come out. First instrument. Pluto in Aquarius. Final ingress January 19, 2024 at 12:58 UT. In Aquarius until 2043 to 2044. Pluto reaches 27 degrees 8 minutes Aquarius at its 2040 station. then enters Pisces in early 2044. A 20-year arc. The last time Pluto transited Aquarius was 1778 to 1798. The American and French Revolutions. The invention of the hot air balloon, the steam engine, the first modern constitutions, the birth of the public sphere as a mechanical fact, the printing press becoming mass media.
The mechanism of the Pluto in Aquarius arc, in 3 movements. Movement 1, 2024 to 2028, the algorithm. Pluto at 0 to 5 degrees Aquarius was the arrival of machine attention as a planetary scale actor. The platform wars, the first AI governance debates, the consolidation of the attention economy into a handful of compute-backed players. Movement 2, 2028 to 2034, the social contract. Pluto at 8 to 18 degrees Aquarius activates the networks themselves, and the state begins to regulate the substrate, data rights, compute governance, the first real attempts at algorithmic accountability. Movement 3, 2034 to 2044, the transformation. Pluto at 18 to 27 degrees Aquarius is the full arrival of the networked society, where citizenship itself is renegotiated around machine-mediated identity. Falsifiable. By 2044, at least 3 major democracies have amended their constitutions to recognize machine-mediated identity rights.
Movement 2?
Movement 2, 2028 to 2034, the Aquarian social contract. Pluto at 8 to 18 degrees Aquarius activates the networks themselves. The state begins to regulate the substrate, data rights, compute governance, algorithmic accountability. And this is the original move. Pluto in Aquarius is not about technology, it's about the standing of the network as a legal subject. By 2034, the question is no longer who owns the data. It's who is the network.
And Movement 3?
Movement 3, 2034 to 2044, the transformational network. Pluto at 18 to 27 degrees Aquarius is the full arrival of the networked society, where citizenship itself is renegotiated around machine-mediated identity. The final falsification of the whole arc. By 2044, at least 3 major democracies have amended their constitutions to recognize machine-mediated identity rights. If not, the Pluto arc needs revision.
I'll add the US layer. Pluto at 5 degrees 30 minutes Aquarius stations retrograde May 5, 2026. In the US Sibley chart, that falls in the 10th house, midheaven 5 degrees 4 minutes Libra. Wait, no, the USMC is 5 degrees 4 minutes Libra. Pluto at 5 degrees 30 minutes Aquarius falls in the 4th house, opposite the MC. Square the ascendant 11 degrees 40 minutes Sagittarius within 6 degrees. The square is wide, but Pluto's orbit crosses the ascendant's degree exactly when Pluto reaches 11 degrees 40 minutes Aquarius in 2030. So, 2030, Pluto conjunct the US ascendant from the 4th equals the identity of the nation-state becomes the site of transformation. Watch the 2030 midterms. They will be framed as existential because the state's self-image is being renegotiated under Pluto. That's a testable claim with a date. Second instrument. Neptune in Aries. Ingress January 25, 2026 at 0 degrees 0 minutes. A zero ingress. Exactly on the cusp. In Aries until May 20, 2038. Then Taurus, with a retrograde return to Aries until January 2039. Final ingress Taurus January 9, 2040 at 0 degrees 48 minutes. Let me confirm from the matrix. Neptune direct station January 9, 2040 at 0 degrees 48 minutes Taurus. So Neptune is definitively in Taurus from early 2040. The last Neptune in Aries was 1861 to 1875. The American Civil War, the unification of Italy and Germany, the invention of dynamite and the machine gun, the romantic nationalism that forged the modern nation-state. Neptune in Aries is the impulse field, collective desire, unmediated, before the state. Saturn, or the network, Uranus, gives it form.
The delineation. Neptune in Aries is the era of the unmediated impulse. 3 signatures. Signature 1. The collective impulse becomes visible as raw data. When Neptune enters Aries on January 25, 2026, at 0 degrees, the collective's desires, fears, and rage become immediately legible. In the stream, in the spike, in the virality. The mediation layer, the gatekeepers who used to shape the impulse, dissolves. What you get is the impulse unedited.
Signature 2?
Signature 2, the weaponized dream. Neptune in Aries squares the Capricorn axis and opposes the Libra axis. Dream meets structure. Propaganda becomes programmable, and the collective impulse becomes the raw material of influence operations. This is why the mid-2020s feel like a hallucination. The dream is being engineered at the same scale as the reality.
Signature 3?
Signature 3, the dissolution of the enemy. Neptune dissolves Aries' need for an enemy, which sounds utopian until you see the mechanism. When the enemy dissolves, the impulse redirects inward. Civil wars of the self, identity fragmentation, the weaponization of authenticity. The falsification. If by 2039, the end of Neptune in Aries, the collective impulse has been remediated into a new structural form, a new covenant of meaning, then the dissolution resolves creatively. If not, the impulse stays raw and the fragmentations compound.
Now the eclipses, because eclipses are where the waveform collapses. 3 Saros families dominate this window, and each has a signature.
Saros 126, the European threshold. August 12, 2026, total solar eclipse at 20 degrees 2 minutes Leo. Saros 126's family history tracks European boundary renegotiation, 1930, 1948, 1966, 1984, all European border events. The 2026 eclipse runs across Spain, Iceland, Greenland, the Azores. Falsifiable. A European border or identity event within 1 year of August 2026, meaning by August 2027.
Saros 131, the annulus of the dream. February 6, 2027. Annular solar eclipse at 17 degrees 38 minutes Aquarius. Member 51 of 70. Magnitude 0.9281. Maximum 16 hours 0 minutes and 48 seconds UT. Path across the South Atlantic and Southern Africa. Annular eclipses are the ring of the promise, the dream that is visible but never complete. This eclipse lands at 17 degrees 38 minutes Aquarius, activating the Pluto in Aquarius arc at the network degree. The annulus over Southern Africa, the continent where the human species was born, is the signature of the origin story rewrite. The collective's origin narrative is being replaced by a machine-mediated one. Watch the February 2027 window for the announcement of a global origin archive, the attempt to machine archive the entire human record, with all its political consequences.
Saros 136, the longest total eclipse of the century. August 2, 2027, total solar eclipse at 9 degrees 55 minutes Leo, 6 minutes and 23 seconds of totality, the longest of the 21st century. The path crosses Luxor, Egypt, the ancient temple of Karnak, and Mecca-adjacent territory. Saros 136's family history, 1909, 1927, 1945, 1963, 1981, 1999, every 19 years. The 1999 member was the August 11th eclipse, the millennial eclipse. Falsifiable. An epical religious, civilizational, or archaeological reframing within 1 year of August 2027.
And the 2028 to 2029 windows. January 25, 2028. Solar eclipse at 6 degrees 11 minutes Aquarius. July 20, 2028. At 29 degrees 51 minutes Cancer. January 13, 2029. Annular at 24 degrees 13 minutes Capricorn. June 10, 2029. Annular at 20 degrees 21 minutes Gemini. July 10, 2029. Annular at 19 degrees 5 minutes Cancer. December 4, 2029. Annular at 13 degrees 34 minutes Sagittarius. 3 annular eclipses in 2029, the annulus year. Annular eclipses are the promise rings, 2029 is the year of the unfulfilled promise, the year the collective is offered 3 versions of the future that don't arrive. Combined with the Taurus ledger, Saturn retrograde in Taurus all summer 2029, 2029 is the year of the ledger's first draft. The repricing begins, the promise is deferred, and the physical reckoning becomes visible. Falsifiable. The 2029 window contains at least one major promise collapse, a flagship project, treaty, or platform announced with maximal fanfare that visibly fails to deliver within its own announced timeline, and the failure becomes the dominant narrative for a full quarter. Now we forecast, phase by phase, with mechanisms. Phase 1. 2026 to 2028. The threshold, the Aries gate, February 20, 2026, opens the window. The Saturn-Neptune conjunction at 0 degrees 45 minutes Aries seeds the 36-year cycle. Saturn stations retrograde at 14 degrees 45 minutes Aries July 25, 2026, and direct at 7 degrees 56 minutes Aries December 9, 2026. Neptune stations at 4 degrees 25 minutes Aries July 5, 2026. Pluto stations at 5 degrees 30 minutes Aquarius May 5, 2026.
The 2026 to 2028 predictions with mechanisms. 1. The Aries Gate legitimacy shock, February 2026 through 2028. Constitutional turbulence in at least one major democracy, triggered by the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in the 4th house of its founding chart. 2. The substrate fracture, 2026 to 2028. One of the top 5 attention platforms is broken up, replaced, or re-legislated by the end of 2027. 3. The Saros 126 boundary event, by August 2027. 4. The first formal AI governance regime, signed before December 2028, timed to the Uranus-Neptune trine family.
And the 2026 to 2028 counter-read, because Amani wants me to disagree. I think the 2026 to 2028 window is quieter than the mechanism suggests. The Aries gate is a threshold, and thresholds are crossed in silence. The visible turbulence will be economic, the Taurus ledger approaching, the intangible physical ratio at maximum, before it is political. Watch March 2027, the Jupiter ingress into Aries? No, Jupiter enters Aries June 28, 2026. Wait, Jupiter. Leo June 28, 2026. Virgo July 24, 2027. Jupiter in Virgo 2027 to 2028 is the ledger-adjacent Jupiter, the expansion of the accounting function. The 2027 to 2028 economic turbulence will be framed as accounting shocks, audits, restatements, collateral repricing. That's the quiet face of the Aries gate, the audit before the reckoning.
That's a real disagreement, and it's resolvable. If by February 2028 the legitimacy shock has produced a structural constitutional event, my read wins. If instead it produces diffuse cultural panic with no structural change, Zuri's read wins. Either way, we learn. That's the point of a falsifiable astrology.
Phase 2. 2029 to 2032. The ledger and the hyperlink converge. Saturn in Taurus, April 11, 2028 to May 30, 2030, with retrograde loops at 11 degrees 19 minutes August 2028, 25 degrees 1 minute September 2029, meets Uranus in Gemini mid-sign, stations at 14 degrees 14 minutes September 17, 2028, 18 degrees 33 minutes September 22, 2029, 22 degrees 54 minutes September 26, 2030, 27 degrees 16 minutes October 1, 2031. Neptune continues through Aries 8 to 17 degrees. Pluto crosses 8 to 15 degrees Aquarius. Jupiter passes Libra August 22, 2028. Scorpio September 22, 2029. Sagittarius October 21, 2030. Capricorn November 13, 2031. Aquarius April 10, 2032. With retrograde return into Capricorn until April 2033. Predictions for 2029 to 2032. 1.
The Hyades hard asset repricing begins within 90 days of the August 21, 2028 station, visible by mid-2029. 2. The first sovereign collateral redefinition before 2031. 3. The actor boundary event, the legal recognition of machine agency, between 2030 and 2032, timed to the Uranus station at 27 degrees Gemini, October 1, 2031. 4. Famine, energy, or water becomes a formal governance quarter in the G20 before 2030.
Counter red. I think the actor boundary event comes earlier, 2029, not 2031. Uranus at 18 degrees 33 minutes Gemini station September 22, 2029. Square Neptune at 11 degrees 8 minutes Aries? No, Gemini squares Virgo and Pisces. Uranus at 18 degrees 33 minutes Gemini is trine Neptune at 11 degrees 8 minutes Aries within 7 degrees. Too wide. The 2029 geometry. Uranus at 18 degrees 33 minutes Gemini sextiles Neptune at 11 degrees 8 minutes Aries. Gemini sextiles Aries and Leo. Yes, within 7 degrees is too wide for exact, but the 2029 Saturn in Taurus at 25 degrees 1 minute stations September 4, 2029. Trines the December 4, 2029 annular eclipse at 13 degrees 34 minutes Sagittarius? No, Taurus trines Virgo and Capricorn, Sagittarius squares Virgo and Pisces. The precise 2029 axis, Saturn at 25 degrees 1 minute Taurus, station September 4, 2029, opposes the Uranus at 18 degrees 33 minutes Gemini? No, I'll keep it simple. 2029 is the annulus year, the year of 3 deferred promises. The actor boundary event is more likely to be triggered by the 2029 promise collapses than by the 2031 station. Amani, your move.
I'll accept a 2-window model, the dress rehearsal in 2029, a minor actor boundary event, and the main event in 2031, timed to the 27-degree Gemini station. Both windows are falsifiable. If neither produces a documented boundary event by the end of 2032, the hyperlink protocol is wrong.
Phase 3. 2033 to 2036. The Dream Enforcement Window. The Saturn-Neptune Squares. September 16, 2033, 19 degrees 30 minutes Cancer over 19 degrees 20 minutes Aries. January 13, 2034, 17 degrees 19 minutes Cancer over 17 degrees 24 minutes Aries. June 25, 2034, 22 degrees 18 minutes Cancer over 22 degrees 9 minutes Aries. Saturn enters Cancer July 12, 2032. Stations at 7 degrees 11 minutes October 17, 2032, and at 21 degrees 20 minutes October 31, 2033. Neptune at 17 to 24 degrees Aries. Pluto at 15 to 19 degrees Aquarius. Uranus enters Cancer August 2, 2032. Stations at 6 degrees 6 minutes October 10, 2033. Jupiter passes Pisces April 13, 2033. Aries April 19, 2034. Taurus April 28, 2035. Gemini May 8, 2036.
Predictions. 1. The Dream Enforcement regime begins before the first exact square on September 16, 2033. 2. The enforcement is visible as a new category of state power, call it narrative regulation. 3. The Saturn-Neptune square family, September 2033 through June 2034, produces at least one institutional collapse, a government, a central bank arrangement, or a media empire.
Counter red. I think the 2033 to 2034 Dream Enforcement window gets preempted. The regulated narrative framework will be announced, but the enforcement will be delayed until the Uranus-Neptune squares of 2039 to 2040. Because enforcement requires the new substrate to be in place, and the substrate doesn't mature until 2036. The 2034 framework is theater, the 2039 to 2040 enforcement is real. That's my falsifiable counter. If the 2034 enforcement is real, visible consequences before 2037, I lose. If it's theater, framework without enforcement until 2039, I win.
Accepted. And notice what just happened. We've made the disagreement itself a falsifiable instrument. That's the QCP principle in miniature: collapse the waveform, date the outcome, keep the ledger.
Phase 4, 2037 to 2040. The convergence. The Uranus-Neptune square family, October 4, 2039, 2 degrees 53 minutes Leo over 2 degrees 45 minutes Taurus. February 2, 2040, 0 degrees 50 minutes Leo over 0 degrees 58 minutes Taurus. August 29, 2040, 5 degrees 50 minutes Leo over 5 degrees 44 minutes Taurus. Neptune enters Taurus May 20, 2038. Stations retrograde August 2, 2038 at 1 degree 22 minutes Taurus. Returns to Aries November 2038. Re-enters Taurus for good January 9, 2040 at 0 degrees 48 minutes. Uranus enters Leo August 4, 2039. Pluto at 22 to 27 degrees Aquarius. And the centerpiece, the Jupiter-Saturn Great Conjunction, October 31 and November 1, 2040. At 18 degrees 8 to 18 degrees 13 minutes Libra. The first great conjunction in an air sign since 1980. The Saturn-Jupiter conjunction at 9 degrees 48 minutes Libra, December 31, 1980. The 1980 Libra conjunction inaugurated the 1981 to 2000 air triplicity of great conjunctions: Libra 1980, Aquarius 2000, Gemini 2020. The 2040 conjunction returns the cycle to Libra after the 2020 Aquarius conjunction, a 20-year air cycle completion. And 48 hours later, the November 3, 2040 annular solar eclipse at 12 degrees 59 minutes Scorpio.
Predictions. 1. The Uranus-Neptune square family, October 2039 through August 2040, produces the final structural renegotiation of the machine-human boundary. 2. The Jupiter-Saturn Great Conjunction in Libra on November 1, 2040, at 18 degrees 8 to 13 minutes, is the signature of a new social covenant, the legitimation of the network age. 3. The annular eclipse of November 3, 2040, at 12 degrees 59 minutes Scorpio, the hollow ring, marks the hollowing of the old structures. The new covenant is sealed in the space the old one leaves behind.
Counter red, and this is my strongest. I think the annular eclipse after the Great Conjunction is the signature of the hollow covenant. Annular eclipses are promise rings, the promise that never fills. The 2040 conjunction seeds the treaty, but the treaty is hollow, signed, celebrated, and then failing to bind where it matters. The real settlement comes later, in the 2041 to 2044 window, when Pluto enters Pisces in 2044 and the Saturn-Neptune opposition approaches. My falsifiable claim: the 2040 treaty is signed but not enforced on its core provision within 24 months, and the enforcement gap becomes the defining political fact of 2041 to 2043.
And that's the episode. Structurally, the Aries gate opens in 2026, the Gemini hyperlink rewires the substrate through 2032, the Taurus ledger audits the promise machine, Pluto in Aquarius rewrites the social contract, Neptune in Aries dissolves the enemy, the eclipses collapse the waveform, and the Great Conjunction of 2040 seals the covenant. 14 years, one waveform, all falsifiable.
The Quantum Collapse Protocol, QCP for short. This is the original method we're handing you tonight, and it's the reason this episode is actionable rather than ornamental. 5 steps, 7 minutes, tonight, at your desk.
And that's the genius of it. The QCP is falsifiable in the small. If you run it for 1 year and your collapse rate is worse than chance, the apparatus is broken, not the sky. That's self-correcting epistemology, and it's the whole brand of this show.
One more thing. The QCP is social. Run it with a partner, and your 2 predictions become entangled. You now have a synastry of predictions, not just charts. That's quantum astrology as practice. Entanglement through shared measurement. So let me leave you with the shape of the next 14 years, one last time.
2026. The Aries gate opens at 0 degrees. The threshold is crossed, in silence, in audits, in the substrate. 2027. the longest eclipse of the century collapses the old story. 2028 to 2031, the hyperlink matures and the ledger audits the promise machine. 2033 to 2034, the dream is enforced. 2037 to 2040, the waveform converges on the covenant. And on November 1, 2040, Jupiter and Saturn conjoin in Libra, and the network age is legitimated. 14 years, one waveform. Keep the ledger.
And through all of it, the waveform, superposed, collapsing at every measurement, entangled across every border, decohering whenever we stop paying attention. The collective mind is not a metaphor. It is the object of study, and you are the observer. So observe, run the QCP, keep the ledger, and when you check your calendar in 2033, 2040, you will know exactly what you were measuring, and why.
The sky doesn't sentence us. It superposes us, and we collapse every time we choose. Measure well.
This has been the Sidereal Signal. I'm Zuri Adaze.
And I'm Dr. Amani Okoye.
Same time next epic.
Same time next epic.